There is a quiet kind of power that most people never notice until they feel it directed at them. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention the way words often do. Instead, it moves like a still shadow across a crowded room, unnoticed at first, until suddenly the atmosphere shifts and people begin to feel it, without understanding why. Conversations slow, eyes begin to wander toward a certain presence. An unspoken tension quietly fills the space. Nothing dramatic has happened. No one has raised their voice. No grand speech has been delivered. And yet, something has changed. Because someone has chosen not to speak. Someone has chosen silence. From the earliest years of our lives, we are taught that speaking is strength. We are praised when we answer quickly, encouraged when we express ourselves loudly, rewarded when we assert our opinions with confidence. Silence, on the other hand, is often misunderstood. It is labeled as weakness, awkwardness, or insecurity. A quiet child is called shy. A silent employee is called disengaged. A person who pauses before responding is often assumed to lack certainty. And so, over time, many of us develop an almost instinctive fear of silence, treating it as something to fill, something to escape, something that must be broken before it becomes uncomfortable. But psychology tells a deeper truth, one that goes beyond social conditioning. Silence is not empty. Silence is not passive. Silence is not the absence of communication. In fact, silence is one of the most powerful forms of communication human beings possess. While words reveal information, silence creates interpretation. And interpretation is where power lives. When someone speaks constantly, their intentions become visible. Their thoughts are laid out plainly. Their emotions are easy to read. But when someone chooses silence, the human mind cannot tolerate the absence of clarity. It begins searching for meaning, filling the quiet space with assumptions, curiosity, and attention. We are wired to do this. Our brains evolved to detect signals in uncertainty, to scan for hidden intentions, to read between lines, even when no lines exist. Silence activates this instinct like nothing else. Imagine sitting across from someone in a conversation. You explain something, perhaps passionately, perhaps nervously, and when you finish, instead of responding immediately, they simply look at you and remain silent. That silence begins to stretch. A few seconds pass, then more, and suddenly you feel an urge rising inside you, a subtle discomfort, a pull to fill the quiet. You start clarifying your point, adding details, revealing more than you intended, simply because the silence feels heavy. What you may not realize in that moment is that the power has shifted. The person who remains silent has not forced anything. They have not interrupted. They have not dominated the conversation with volume, yet they now hold control over its direction. This happens because silence creates psychological pressure. Words release pressure. Silence contains it. When someone talks continuously, they release their internal tension outward, allowing others to observe, react, even challenge them. But when someone remains silent, they hold that tension within, and it becomes concentrated. That concentration creates a subtle sense of authority. People instinctively perceive silence, especially when paired with calm presence, as confidence. Because only someone who feels secure does not feel the need to constantly prove themselves through words. Think about moments of true authority in your life. A respected teacher entering a classroom doesn't need to shout to command attention. A skilled negotiator doesn't need to speak endlessly to influence outcomes. A person with deep self-assurance often listens more than they talk. Their silence is not empty. It is observant, intentional, controlled. And that control signals strength at a subconscious level. There is also a deeper psychological mechanism at play. Silence increases perceived value. In human behavior, things that are scarce are automatically perceived as more valuable. Words that are constant lose impact, but words that are rare carry weight. When someone speaks less, each sentence becomes more significant. People lean in, they listen more carefully. They remember more vividly. Silence in this way acts like a frame around a painting. It doesn't change the content, but it amplifies the attention given to it. Perhaps the most overlooked power of silence is that it gives you something words can never provide: the ability to observe without interference. When you are speaking, you cannot fully listen. When you are explaining, you cannot fully notice. But when you are silent, your awareness expands. You begin to see micro-expressions, hear subtle shifts in tone, detect emotions beneath the surface of what people say. Silence transforms you from a participant reacting to the moment into an observer understanding the moment. And understanding always precedes influence. This is why the most emotionally intelligent people often appear calm and quiet in conversations. They are not disengaged. They are gathering information. They are reading the emotional currents beneath the words. They notice what is said, what is unsaid, and what is avoided entirely. And by the time they choose to speak, they do so with clarity and precision because they have seen the full picture. There is also an inner dimension to the power of silence, one that has nothing to do with social interactions and everything to do with the relationship you have with yourself. In a world filled with constant noise, notifications, opinions, demands, expectations, silence becomes a rare space where your mind can finally settle. And when the external noise fades, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin to understand your emotions instead of reacting blindly to them. You begin to notice patterns in your behavior, motivations in your choices, fears beneath your decisions. This inner clarity is a form of power that no external dominance can replace. Because when you understand yourself deeply, you become less reactive, less influenced by external chaos, less dependent on validation. Silence allows you to process rather than impulsively respond. It creates a pause between stimulus and reaction, and in that pause lies the freedom to choose how you act instead of being controlled by emotion. And yet, mastering silence is not easy. It requires resisting the instinct to fill every gap with words. It requires tolerating the discomfort of pauses. It requires trusting that your presence alone is enough, even without constant explanation or affirmation. For many people, this is difficult because silence confronts them with their own internal noise, the anxious thoughts, the self-doubt, the fear of being misunderstood or ignored. But on the other side of that discomfort lies something transformative. Because when you learn to be comfortable with silence, you no longer feel pressured to perform for others. You no longer rush to justify yourself. You no longer react impulsively to criticism or provocation. Instead, you develop a calm center that remains steady regardless of external turbulence. And that calmness, more than any loud display of confidence, signals true power. There is a moment that often occurs when someone begins practicing intentional silence. They notice that people start revealing more to them. Friends open up more deeply. Colleagues share more honestly. Even strangers sometimes speak more freely. This happens because silence creates psychological safety. When someone listens without interrupting, without immediately judging or responding, it lowers defensive barriers. It invites authenticity. It communicates respect and presence without needing to say a word. Over time, this creates a profound shift in how others perceive you. You are no longer seen as someone trying to dominate conversations or compete for attention. You are seen as someone grounded, thoughtful, and emotionally stable. And these qualities naturally attract trust and respect, the true foundations of influence. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of silence is this: it allows you to choose your words with intention. When you are not speaking constantly, you gain the freedom to speak deliberately. And when you speak deliberately, your words carry precision, clarity, and impact. They are not diluted by excess. They are not weakened by emotional impulsivity. They arrive at the right moment with the right tone, and they resonate more deeply because they emerge from a place of awareness rather than reaction. In the end, Silence does not make you powerful because it forces others to submit, or because it creates fear. It makes you powerful because it reflects inner stability. It shows that you are not controlled by the need for validation, attention, or immediate expression. It reveals that you can remain calm in uncertainty, patient in tension, and observant in chaos. And in a world where most people are constantly reacting, constantly speaking, constantly trying to be heard, the ability to remain silent becomes rare. And rarity in human psychology always carries power. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, in a conflict, or in a moment of uncertainty, resist the instinct to fill the silence immediately. Allow the pause to exist. Let the quiet settle. Notice how the atmosphere shifts. Notice how people respond differently. Notice how your own mind becomes clearer. Because within that silence lies a presence that words alone can never create. A presence that does not demand attention, yet naturally commands it.